Welcome back to the channel. Subscribe if you are news. Here we are going to discuss recent updates on Operation Midway Blitz. ICE deployed tear gas during protests in Chicago after demonstrators gathered near federal offices to express opposition to immigration enforcement actions. The protests emerged in response to recent ICE operations targeting undocumented immigrants, which community organizations and activists argued caused family separations and disrupted local neighborhoods. Authorities said the tear gas was used to prevent breaches of federal property and to maintain public safety. Protesters and civil rights advocates criticized the response as excessive, noting that most demonstrators were peaceful and organized. These events are part of a broader national debate over the role of federal immigration enforcement and its interaction with local jurisdictions. Chicago has a long history as a sanctuary city, meaning local authorities generally limit cooperation with federal immigration enforcement in order to protect residents who are undocumented. This designation has often put the city at the center of conflicts between federal officials and local communities. In the weeks leading up to the protests, ICE announced targeted operations in Illinois, prompting advocacy groups to mobilize residents for demonstrations. Organizers emphasized nonviolent action, such as marches, sit-ins, and rallies, to draw attention to concerns about detention conditions, family separations, and deportation practices. Protests took place in multiple areas of the city, especially near federal buildings and ICE offices. Participants included a wide range of community members, students, families, faith-based organizations, and immigrant rights groups. Organizers stressed the importance of peaceful assembly and encouraged residents to be aware of their legal rights. Social media played a major role in spreading information about events, though some posts contained misleading or incomplete details. Local news outlets attempted to verify reports and provide factual coverage for residents following the developments. The federal response, including the use of tear gas, drew significant attention. Tear gas, also known as CS gas, is a chemical irritant intended to disperse crowds in situations considered unsafe by authorities. While generally classified as non-lethal, its use on protesters, particularly those who are peaceful, raised concerns among civil rights groups, city leaders, and residents. Officials said the measure was necessary to maintain order and protect property, while critics argued it escalated tensions and risked harm to vulnerable populations, including children and the elderly who were present. Community reaction was swift. Local advocacy organizations and legal aid groups set up hotlines and assistance programs for residents concerned about ICE operations. Legal clinics offered advice for individuals potentially facing detention or deportation, and shelters reported an increase in inquiries for support and temporary housing. Religious organizations and neighborhood groups organized informational meetings to educate families about immigrant rights and ways to participate safely in civic action. Many residents used these meetings to discuss how to engage constructively with law enforcement while protecting their communities. Public data and reporting give a snapshot of the scale of the events. Estimates suggest that several hundred to a few thousand people participated in demonstrations over the past month, with participation varying by day and location. ICE confirmed that dozens of individuals were detained during its operations, though privacy rules limited the release of exact figures. Arrests reported by local law enforcement were primarily for obstruction, failure to disperse, or trespassing, rather than violent offenses. City officials stressed that these figures reflected a small fraction of participants, most of whom adhered to nonviolent protest guidelines. The protests in Chicago mirror a national trend. Cities across the United States, including New York, Los Angeles, and San Diego, have seen demonstrations against ICE actions, detention conditions, and deportation policies. These events often involve debates over civil liberties, local government authority, and federal immigration enforcement priorities. In many cases, community groups have worked to provide legal, medical, and educational support to residents affected by ICE activity. Local governments have sometimes challenged federal enforcement actions, seeking legal reviews or policy reforms. Political responses in Chicago varied. Some city officials expressed strong support for the protesters' right to assemble and called for federal accountability, including oversight of the use of tear gas. Others emphasized the need to maintain safety around federal property and defended law enforcement's actions as necessary to prevent escalation. Legal organizations such as the American Civil Liberties Union (ACLU) pledged to monitor the situation, offering support to detained individuals and advocating for clearer regulations regarding crowd control measures. Community advocacy continued alongside protests. Local groups organized nonviolent demonstrations and educational campaigns, focusing on immigrant rights, civil liberties, and public policy reforms. Initiatives included outreach programs for families affected by ICE operations, public workshops on legal protections, and partnerships with city officials to promote safe and lawful civic engagement. By providing information and support, these groups aimed to ensure residents could participate in advocacy without facing undue risk. Media coverage played a central role in shaping public understanding of the events. Local newspapers, television stations, and online platforms reported on demonstrations, ICE operations, and community reactions. Some outlets highlighted the perspective of law enforcement and public safety, while others focused on civil rights and the social impact of federal enforcement. Social media amplified first-hand accounts, helping residents document events and share updates quickly. Officials and organizations encouraged the public to consult verified sources to avoid misinformation, which can spread rapidly during high-profile protests. The protests also prompted discussions about broader immigration policy. Advocates argue that federal enforcement practices, such as raids and detentions, can have long-lasting social and economic consequences for families and communities. Policymakers debated the balance between national security, local governance, and community well-being. Experts suggest that ongoing civic engagement and legal reform are necessary to address the underlying concerns raised by protesters, including family stability, access to legal representation, and humane treatment in detention. Health and safety considerations were another important focus. Community health organizations offered guidance to residents on avoiding exposure to chemical irritants like tear gas and managing stress related to ICE operations. Neighborhood groups provided mental health resources and encouraged families to support each other during times of tension. Public safety officials emphasized the importance of peaceful assembly and cooperation with law enforcement to prevent accidents or injuries during demonstrations. Education and outreach became central to community response. Local schools, universities, and nonprofit organizations held forums to discuss immigration policy, civic rights, and community advocacy. Students and volunteers helped distribute informational materials, organize events, and provide logistical support for peaceful protests. These efforts strengthened community networks and provided residents with tools to participate in civic life safely and effectively. The situation in Chicago continues to evolve. ICE has indicated that further operations may occur, though specific details remain confidential. Protest organizers plan continued demonstrations emphasizing nonviolent action and legal advocacy. City officials have called for ongoing oversight and communication with federal authorities to ensure public safety and respect for residents' rights. Experts suggest that as long as federal immigration policies remain a contentious issue, similar protests and community responses are likely to continue across the city and the broader region. In addition to immediate protests, residents and organizations have focused on long-term solutions. Advocacy groups have encouraged residents to engage with policymakers at the local, state, and federal levels. They emphasize the importance of civic participation, such as contacting representatives, attending town hall meetings, and contributing to community planning efforts. By promoting education, advocacy, and constructive engagement, these groups hope to address systemic issues related to immigration enforcement while protecting community well-being. Data collection and monitoring are ongoing. Legal organizations and researchers track the number of detentions, arrests, and public responses to ICE operations. Early reports suggest that most residents comply with local regulations while exercising their right to protest. At the same time, the number of people seeking legal advice and community support has increased, highlighting the tangible impact of federal enforcement on local neighborhoods. The events in Chicago illustrate the intersection of federal authority, local governance, and civic activism. They reveal both the challenges authorities face in enforcing federal law and the community's efforts to ensure fairness, safety, and human rights. By focusing on nonviolent protest, education, and legal support, residents and advocacy groups have created a framework for constructive engagement that balances public safety with civil liberties. Experts note that national conversations about immigration enforcement, civil rights, and community protection will continue to shape policy and public perception. Chicago's experience reflects broader trends in the United States, where local communities often play a crucial role in responding to federal actions. Coordination among residents, advocacy groups, local officials, and legal organizations can help ensure that enforcement practices are conducted responsibly and that residents' rights and well-being are prioritized. In conclusion, the deployment of tear gas by ICE during protests in Chicago highlights the ongoing tension between federal enforcement actions and community response. While authorities justify measures as necessary for safety and order, residents and advocacy organizations emphasize the need for accountability, transparency, and protection of civil liberties. The protests demonstrate the power of nonviolent civic engagement and the importance of education, legal support, and community organization. As the situation develops, Chicago serves as an example of how local communities can respond constructively to complex social and political challenges while promoting awareness, dialogue, and reform.